Right. All right. Everyone, welcome to communications as part of our Digital Tools Week. So communications, there's so many different aspects to that. And this one is going to be a little bit different as it's not all digital skills. Communication comes in so many different forms. So give me a drop in the chat. I know we all kind of introduced ourselves a little bit beforehand, but give me some in the chat, kind of what has been your experience with communication in PTA? Have you been media chair? Have you done a newsletter? Have you sent emails? Have you talked to parents in person? Either come off mute or drop it in the chat. Kind of what has been your experience with communication so far? If it's your first year to PTA, you can be like, not it, I'm out. All right, we've got some emails. Very good. Yep, that one's very common. Newsletters, Facebook, absolutely. Social media. Email lead for kindergartners. Oh, those are the cutest ones. Treasure. All right. Treasure is a good one to kind of learn about communication because you've got to tell everyone no. And I laugh because that was my first position in being PTA, was being the treasurer. I didn't really know anyone, and it was very difficult to make friends when your job is literally, nope, can't do that. Nope, that's against the rules. Nice try, but no. So treasure is a good one to come to this communication. Katie, lots of one-on-one, absolutely. All right, cool. So thank you everyone for dropping that. What I'm starting with here and sharing my screen is our website. So one of the things that I have done with communication is put together a communication plan. We're going to kind of talk through it piece by piece. So if you are with Seminole, or even if you're not, you can absolutely come in here. Oops, wrong link. Forms and templates. So one of the things I put together is what's called a communication plan. One of the things that a lot of local units and county councils and state leaders, we all tend to run into, is making sure that our message gets across effectively to the people that need to hear it. Knowing your audience is a big thing. So I want to start here just to kind of give us a starting point. This particular file is one of our templates, and I offer this as, I put this on our website because this is a great thing to sit down with your principal to kind of have that conversation on how communications need to go across. So as you'll see here, and again, you can edit this as your particular social, as your local unit needs. But one of the biggest things when it comes to communication is, one, making sure that the right people are hearing the message at the right time in the right way. So a few things we're going to talk through. So let's start with print. We have our newsletters, right? And we have one of you who has done a newsletter. So if the newsletter person, let me see, I don't know who that was, can come off mute and just tell me, how often do you get a response to your newsletters? How often do you find that someone is clicking the links or has a question, or even reads? I will give credit for anyone who's actually read the entire email, or you can type it in the chat, either way. But tell me your newsletter experience, your printed communications.
So what we would do is we would email the newsletter. So the president would send out an email to the email grade leads, and then we would all send it to every single kindergarten parent, guardian, loved one in kindergarten. So it was 9 classes. So I had, tons of emails for kindergarten only. And I would always get a response. Someone would always ask a question every time.
All right, excellent. So what, with that communication, what do you think what were they responding to? Was it events? Like, what made them respond?
So it was mainly events. They wanted to know what was going on, or like, how can we shout out my child's birthday? It was either general or events.
Perfect. All right, excellent. And that's kind of the key point when it comes to printed information. And that's why we're going to go through it step by step, is people are looking for, oops, look at me, I edit this on accident. People are looking for things that are relevant to them. So when you're doing printed communication, it's very important to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. A newsletter, depending on your audience, you really don't want it to be more than 2 pages. If you're doing like a PDF or you're using Canva, but you want to highlight it with pictures, because pictures are going to get people's attention. You want something they can click on if they want to get more information about that specific thing, but it's got to be something that can get their attention. for example, at the county level, ours is a little bit longer, but we break it up into different sections on who's going to be looking for what. Like we have a section for our reflections chairs, we have a section for our legislative chairs, but within each one of those sections, it's got to be broken down and it's got to be digestible. I'll be perfectly honest, most people read the first 1 to 2 sentences of every paragraph, and if it doesn't catch their attention, they're gone. So when you're doing a newsletter, and that's a fantastic way, is they're looking for things that apply to them. So with an event, you want something big and bold, and this is saying exactly, this is when it's happening, this is what's needed. And this is a great way to kind of put out your advertisements, right? When you're trying to get people to join your PTA, you can absolutely post that beautiful description of what everyone does in our bylaws. Not that we don't all love that, but if you post that, not very, very few people outside of PTA are going to have any idea what that means. So when you're trying to do print, it's got to be digestible. And I'm going to talk about, positions, because that's something one of us, all of us are like, please, please help us, please, please, So you want to start with, what's the time commitment involved? What, you can do high, medium, low. So you can do it exactly like that. 1 to 2 sentences, again, 3 at the most, when you're putting those little bits of information and combining those into and having links for them to go somewhere else. Okay, so that's print. Emails and there's a lot of tools that can show you who's opening the emails, what time, and that's something to kind of monitor as well. For the most part, when you're sending out anything in print and social media, you want it to be, if you're going to send it in the morning, you want to send it about 8:15. A lot of the emails that parents are getting from companies, spams, etc., they're automatically sent out around 7 to 8 o'clock. So if you want to be the one that comes in their email last, I don't even care if it's 8:01. You want it to be an odd time, so that way your email is sitting at the top of their inbox. They see yours first. Same thing towards the end of the afternoon. A lot of families start to sit down and their kids are in bed, or maybe they're laying in bed, or they're sitting down for the day. Around 7 to 8 p.m. typically is when you're going to get the most kind of engagement for a printed something sent out via email. Newsletters going home, those are a little bit different because they are actually getting printed. Those are fantastic as well because a lot of families respond to print. So now let's hop on over to emails. So emails, I know we had someone in here who mentioned emails, that they send those out. Emails are similar, except they have one specific message typically. One thing I do want to caution that I see a lot, not just PTAs, that I see a lot of people do in general, is when you send an email, there's, it's like if you're sending it to your board, for example, like, we need you to do these 4 things. And there's a paragraph explaining what needs to happen, blah, blah, blah. You need to do A first, then B first, then C first. And I can almost guarantee you, as soon as you send that email, you're going to have 3 responses asking you questions about everything you just put in that email. So when you're sending emails, similarly, you want to make sure that it's digestible, short, sweet, and to the point. So if you're sending an email, you want to make sure that that you're bolding information that's important. So I'm going to, if, for example, I was sending this in an email, I would take something and I would highlight this. I can do bold, and what that's going to do is that's going to catch people's attention. And when you're sending an email, you can bold the things that they really need to pay attention to. Usually that's going to be times and dates. And like always, because I am terrible at it, you want to make sure that you're putting the right date and the right time. But if something's due, you want to bold any times or dates, bold any links, bold any action items. So when you're sending an email, that's how you're going to get people's attention, is by putting an item on bold. You can also include hyperlinks, but you want to use it sporadically. You don't want to bold your entire email. As adorable as that would be, that's going to definitely defeat the purpose. So how many of you guys have sent emails out and have gotten a lot of response, or maybe haven't gotten any response to something you thought you would? Tell me about your email experiences so far. Don't everybody come off mute at once.
My newsletter was email, so I would get the emails back, but I would also try to do it either first thing in the morning or like late at night, or like on a Sunday night sometimes. I don't know if that was the best time, but.
That's a good question. When you're doing, and I'm actually going to switch over here, if you're doing social media, because we're going to switch to that in just a second, because it's similar concepts. If you are doing social media, Facebook, One of the advantages of social media is it kind of tells you exactly when your families are active. So this is my own PTA page, or excuse me, my own Facebook page. So we're going to switch over and we're going to go to our business suite here.
We are switching now to do it through Member Hub or give backs. Do you guys do that?
For our newsletter, so with our newsletter, we create it in Canva and then I send it out through givebacks. Yes.
Okay.
So, and I can hop over and show you that in a second.
And you send it to everybody, right? Not just members of your PTA, everybody in your PTA?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, 100% for several. That's a fantastic question because one, you want to make sure that your please join us is absolutely on that link. So if they're not a member, you can advertise to them like, hey, if you haven't joined our PTA, you definitely need to do that now. But also it kind of boosts your numbers when you're trying to get sponsors. So when you're trying to get a sponsor wants to know what they're getting out of it for them. So if it's a local pizza place, a local t-shirt vendor, whatever the case is, if anyone's going to want to sponsor you, they are doing it as much as we'd love to think altruistically, but they are a business. They have a business to run. So what they're getting out of it is your audience. So the more people that you have on your distro list, if they're not members, the better you're going to be able to sell. Please be a sponsor with us because we're emailing 500 people every month, or we're emailing 250 people. And you can even show them, like if you've got an engaging newsletter that's getting people to click, you can show them, hey, this is how many people are clicking on our emails. And Member Hub gives you the ability to do that. And so does your social media. So if, and this is kind of what I wanted to show you real quick. So if you have social media, and I will tell you, if you only have one person or you have someone who doesn't have a whole lot of time to commit to social media, Facebook and Instagram are usually the easiest to work with. Instagram has a broader range of, as far as the age of people that use Instagram. So, you know, our younger parents and our older parents like me and those above tend to use Facebook, whereas Instagram's a little bit more diverse as far as the audience. However, Facebook allows you to put links in. The picture size is less limited. You can also do videos. It's a little bit less restrictive. So you can put more content and it's easier to engage with Facebook than it is with Instagram, but it's two different audience. But I recommend doing both of those because one of the advantages is this Meta Business Suite. You can post to Facebook and Instagram at the same time. So if someone is doing your social media, it makes it 1,000 times easier. They don't have to go to another platform to do it. So you can add a photo and put it here, whatever, text. So we're going to do blah, blah, blah. We're not actually going to post this. So if you're going to do something in Instagram, it has to have a photo. Again, remember anything that posts to Instagram in the comments, if you put a link in the comments, it will not be something people can click on. So if you've got something that's really long, they're not going to be able to click on it through Instagram. What I would recommend doing is putting it on your website and having your website in your bio on Instagram, or leave the description as well. There's two places that you can put on your main profile that people can go to and click. So I'll give an example here. So if I go to our website, the event that we're doing right now is Digital Tools. I've been posting about it on Instagram, but since they can't click the links, I just tell them to come to stcpta.com and the link is right here, which takes them to where they need to go. Facebook, again, super easy because you can put links in the comments and people can go right to it. So what I wanted to show you guys here is when you do go to make a post on Facebook or Instagram and you click schedule, because one of the things I love to do and recommend to everyone is you can sit down on Saturday or Sunday or whatever the end of your week is and schedule all your posts for the week. You can schedule up to, I believe it's 60 days in advance. You can schedule lots of stuff in advance. You can still post dynamically, and dynamic posts do tend to get a little bit better treatment with the algorithm, but it's better to have things planned and scheduled rather than having to worry about it all day. So even though the algorithm may not boost it as much, it's still better to have your post hitting when things are active. And that's what I wanted to show you right here. As you see right here, this little button at the bottom left, active times. The cool part about this is it shows when your followers are active. So if I wanted to make this post, I can do the exact same post to Facebook and Instagram, and it's telling me when our followers are typically active. So 5:00 p.m. I can pick, I would want this to hit Facebook at 5 because that's when most of our people are active. Instagram, it varies a little bit. for some reason. On Mondays, they're at 5, Tuesdays, they're at 6. Oh, they went away. And then Sundays, again, if I wanted to wait a week, I do not know why, but 2 a.m. seems to be when our Instagram followers are active. This is a really interesting way to kind of plan this, but it gives you an idea of when your followers are actually going to happen. Another thing I'll kind of show you is understanding your demographics as well as like who's actually following you. So if you hit insights and you come here, you can get an idea of who your audience is. So if we come down here, if you look at our Facebook followers, we have 90% women. Not that that's going to surprise anyone, but we actually have more male followers on Instagram than we do on Facebook percentage-wise. Now, we don't have nearly as many Instagram followers, but that gives you an idea of what the age and what the gender is. And I know in PTA, we really do not have nearly as many men in general in our in our boards and in volunteering with us. So it's something to kind of keep that in mind. And you can see something to like, hey, it's growing. You want your PTA board to match the community and the members that you serve. And most of the time, there's plenty of male members, but we want to get them as followers as well. So we want to check and see who's engaging, when they're engaging, which posts they're engaging to, and all of your social media. And we'll have these insights that you can go into. So you kind of want to dig around and see what people are responding to. So you have your overview, but you can literally dive into it, and you can go into every single post that you make and see which ones people are responding to. So here, if I go here, every single post, this is one, it had 183 people respond to it, 254, whereas this one only had 16 people. But you can see this one's Instagram, we have less followers. And so if I'm doing Facebook post to Facebook post, this one had 70 people compared to this one, which had 254. There's not nearly as many people responding to this post as they are others. So that's something that you can think about as a communications chair or a media chair or something. Okay, they're not responding to this post, and why? If you are doing social media, tag anyone who's relevant for several reasons. One, so I'll give an example. As county PTA, we like to tag Seminole County Public Schools a lot because we want them to share our information, it's relevant, or we're sharing something they sent to us. But when you tag them, it boosts your algorithm and you're getting your information out to more people. So tag anybody that's relevant. Don't tag anybody that has absolutely nothing to do, because they might get annoyed and block you. And it's, you want to find a relevant audience. You don't want to get everybody that, you don't want to have your algorithm going out and finding everybody that's not going to be interested in what you're doing. You want to try and find people that are going to be interested. So you want to, follow pages for your school district. You want to follow nonprofits that also support your community. You want to follow children's advocacy organizations. Anybody, especially anybody in your area or in your county that is going to benefit you. As you are a elementary school, follow all the other elementary schools in your area, get your ideas from them, like their posts. That's a fabulous way for us to support each other, because not only do we get to have wonderful ideas and see what everybody else is doing, snooping around, we're all the same organization. So we're all about sharing ideas. So not only do you get to see what other people are doing, you can support them by just clicking the likes and everything like that. Because as you like someone's post or you share someone's post, especially if you make a comment on someone's post, it boosts their algorithm. And that's why if you guys are in our Seminole County Leaders Group, I put that meme in there where everyone's like, I made a post, but not even our own board members like it. Okay, get your board on board. Get them to like your post. Even if they don't want to share it, which is fine. Not everybody likes to share PTA posts. Get them to like it, comment on it, say, hey, way to go. Because what that's doing is it's boosting it in the feed, and you're expanding your audience to people who would also be interested in something similar.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Well, that's kind of a question. We have a private Facebook page,
Mhm.
and kind of a sore spot for a lot of newcomer families coming in. We keep it private. What I've been told is that we have a lot of specific times and pictures of kids on there. But other parents who come in, they're like, oh, we can't even get on and see what's going on. And then I think what you were saying, I really agree to, like, participation and the linking people, but we can't do that because we're private.
So are you saying it's a Facebook group or a Facebook page?
Well, I guess it's a group.
That's a good question.
I'm not Facebook savvy. I'm really not.
You're fine, 100%. We have some of our own units that do the same thing where they have a Facebook group. They do not have a Facebook page. We have a couple that have both, and there are pros and cons to each one.
Mhm.
With a Facebook page, it is one-way communication. The only people who can post on it are the PTA or whoever, whoever you have
Oh,
established as your admin. It is one-way communication.
okay.
You can send out as much information, but that is exactly how you're going to sell it to a sponsor. I mean, you could potentially, if you've got 400 or 500 people in your Facebook group, you could tell them, hey, we're going to send it to them. But unless you're letting those sponsors into your Facebook group, they're not going to be able to see it. And it does restrict the audience. Because if you have 500 followers on a Facebook page, you have 500 followers in a Facebook group, or you have 500 members in a Facebook group, only the people in that group are going to be able to see it. They're not going to be able to share that post with anyone. And if they like it, no one outside of that group is going to be able to see it. Whereas if they like your Facebook post on a page, everyone who follows them will be able to see that they liked it, and it's going to boost it, and it's better for advertising purposes. And, it's better for branding, and it is better for communication to have a Facebook page. Now, that being said, to your point, as PTA, when it comes to pictures, one, never take a picture during school hours. There's way too many rules and laws for us to worry about that as volunteers. If you're going to take it during school hours, either take a picture of the back of their head or take the picture and put smiley faces over it. Take pictures of your own kids, which is fine, or take pictures of the teachers as long as they're okay with that. Now, if it's a public event, it's open to the public, it's after school, there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. So you can take pictures, but you still want to, ask, if you're walking around like, hey, can I take your picture for our Facebook page? That is a courtesy. And that way you can still share those photos and things like that. Now, Facebook group does give you a different advantage. It's not so much the communication and advertising, but it helps you connect better with your families because it can be more of a conversation piece. So that way the families can post questions like, hey, when is open house? Or, hey, meet the teacher, or hey, who else has this teacher? So parents and everyone can post within a Facebook group. You can restrict it where posts have to be approved by admin, so you can kind of keep an eye on it. And you can set your questions and only approve or disapprove who can and cannot be in the Facebook group. So it has its advantages. I like the idea of only having a page, but I'm open to having both. It's the ones that have just a Facebook group where you are absolutely restricting yourself. Not necessarily a good or bad thing, but that's just the choice of the board. If you don't have a page itself, you're going to be restricting what you can do with your social media and who your audience is. So you're not going to be able to connect with your community. And that can be important when you're trying to find donations, or you're trying to find people to come out and volunteer, because all your volunteers don't have to be your family. Like you're your families. You can reach out to, retirement communities in your area, the VFW, any kind of other nonprofit organization. They love to come out and help. And that's a lot more difficult to do when you're in a group because it keeps your information sequestered. But it does give your families a better way to communicate with you, and they're more open to ask questions, because when they ask a question, they're asking it of everyone in that group, not just your PTA. So they can feel a little bit more supported and a little bit more private. Does that answer your question?
It does. We have a group. Yes, we have a group that makes sure, because everybody can post. I mean, we limit like who can post, like we approve it before by hand, but yeah,
Right.
it's a group for sure.
Okay, cool. And it's fine to have both. We, as as a county council, we have a group for our reflections people. We have a group for just our local leaders, but we have our page, and they're two different audiences, right? In our local leaders group, we're trying to support it's just our PTA leaders. We don't let anyone else in. It's just our county. We keep it very comfortable. We want everybody. It's just Seminole County. We're all just here, so that way they feel open to ask those questions, share photos, whatever they want to do. But then we also have the public, because we want to tell people what PTA is doing. We want to explain, this is the difference that we're making. This is what we're doing for these kids, and we need your help. And that's easier to accomplish through a page. And you can have both. Absolutely. You can totally have both. Excellent questions. You guys are my best audience so far today. Instagram does not allow groups, neither does Twitter. Again, we have TikTok and YouTube as well, but if you only have one person and they don't necessarily have a lot of time, like I said, Facebook and Instagram is going to cover a huge majority of your audience, and you can do both at the same time. So if you come here with this, if someone sends you a message, you can check your messages for both Facebook and Instagram right here. So you can see anybody that hit you up through Messenger. You can see anybody who's messaged you through Instagram. I like to mark them as soon as they're done, because that drives me crazy if they're if they're left unread or uncompleted. So you can see all of your comments here and go through. So if I were to say here, I marked all these as done, just because I keep, like I said, it drives me crazy to leave something undone. But you can go through, and you don't have to scroll through your whole page to see all of your comments. It will tell you every comment that's right here, and then you can go and comment right to it. I can reply right from this website. Okay. Written, I'm going to skip a little bit because we don't do a whole lot of written communications anymore as PTAs. Almost all of it's digital. And then printing. What I do want to kind of stop on real quick is this overall communication plan and what this spreadsheet is for. So a lot of local units, especially if you've got a brand new board or brand new team or a brand new principal or brand new admin team, this column right here, expectations, can vary wildly. There are some people, I'll give an example for the newsletter. I've met some principals that are fantastic, and as long as you get it to them the day of, they will absolutely get that newsletter printed for you. Some principals will absolutely not do that, and you need to give them at least a week or two to get that information for them. So the purpose of this particular communication plan is for local units. Typically the president, at least the president and the principal should have an annual meeting. A lot of times the treasurer gets invited, or the VP of fundraising programs, and sometimes the AP, to kind of sit down and go over the school calendar for the year, what the goals of the PTA are compared to the school, because you want them to align. The school is separate from PTA, but you're working towards the same thing, and every local unit will have different needs. So if you're at an elementary school, maybe their biggest need is, just hungry, like kids are hungry. So what your principal may say is like, we really need support in the food pantry. We really need food nutrition programs, et cetera. So you want to have that expectation when you have that conversation with your principal every year is, what are our needs for this year? Maybe it's literacy, maybe on the state testing, the school did not do that good on literacy. And as a whole school, we really struggled. So this year, let's focus on literacy programs. Every year that can change. Some schools may want to have the same thing as year over year, and they may want to tweak it, but that's something you want to ask your principals, like, what is our goal for this year? What are the school's greatest needs? And so you have that conversation with the principal when you come back to your board and say, okay, here's the school's greatest needs. How can we help? And you kind of do a calendaring conversation and kind of plan out the big events. Like, hey, this is when we will probably do a fundraiser, or the school say, hey, this is when we are doing a fundraiser. When is our best nights? A lot of these schools will have, especially the ones that are Title I, they have a lot of events that they have to do. They have to do literacy events. They have to do math events. Ask for their school improvement plan. Talk to them about it. They have to have those dates in advance. And rather than having your PTA do the program all by itself, join in with the school. If they're already doing a literacy night, set up a PTA table, maybe bring some snacks, advertise it on your PTA page, do a joint program, so that way you're not having to do your own PTA programs. If you're helping the school, that still counts as one of your 3 programs to one fundraiser. So find all of that out at the beginning of the year. But what this particular spreadsheet comes in is when someone is new, whether it's the school, whether it's the PTA, have these expectations. These are kind of the bare minimums. How far in advance do you need a newsletter? So like with PTA, we have Member Hub. We've got a lot of ways we can send our own newsletter, but we have no way to communicate to every family in the school, especially the ones that just joined. So it's fabulous so I'll give an example. One of our schools would do the newsletter, like we did the newsletter. The school would tell us, a few things that they wanted included. We did the newsletter, we sent it to them, they printed it out, and they put it in the boxes. This was for elementary school. So the school kind of did their page and we did 2 pages, and it went out in the paper version every day. We had another school that the school sent their own newsletter, but they would include a link to the PTA newsletter as part of their newsletter. Another option, we had one school that the school did not want to do the newsletter at all, so they let the PTA do it, and then whatever the link was, and they would send it out. So whatever the school preference is, you do need to work with whatever they're willing and able to do. So every principal is different, and it's not always the principal. We have some where it's the assistant principal, some where it's the school administrative, SAM, school administrative administrator. So someone does the newsletter at the school. So whatever their preference is, you want to try to work with that. But these expectations really need to be set in advance, and it's going to save you a lot of it's going to save a lot of arguments. It's going to save a lot of frustrations. So when you're talking, newsletter is a good one. So how far in advance if the principal's sending it out, how far in advance do you need that newsletter? If the school wants to send something on social media, or PTA wants something on social media, how far in advance do I need to get that to the media chair? You don't want to set anyone up. And I've seen it a few times where like, oh, well, so-and-so doesn't work, so they can do whatever. You don't want to do that to people, right? You want to be respectful of everyone's time, especially if you've got a treasurer who doesn't have daytime hours or doesn't have nighttime hours when their co-signer does. Like if the treasurer and co-signer work different hours, you want to make sure that they have enough time to get together and talk to each other. Like, okay, so how far in advance do I need such and such? And your monthly reports, everyone should be doing a monthly report. At the county level, we have a Google form for people to fill out every month, and it automatically converts it into a PDF, which the secretary attaches, and that goes out with the agenda every month. Doesn't have to be that formal. If you want to know how to do that, we will have that class later this week. But how far in advance do we need those monthly reports in order for the secretary to get it together and create the agenda and send it out to the entire board? Event flyers. We want to make sure that we are not sending flyers and reminders for events for families last minute. I have seen that happen. One of my own schools that I attended love to do this. They love to announce events literally the day before or the day of, and it was almost impossible for us to do anything. And that happens. We have a lot of principals that will be like, oh, we need this, we need this, we need this. And you've got to have it in your budget, first of all. So if it's not in your budget, you've got to tell your principal, oh, we've got to wait till August or December, et cetera, for a general meeting. If it is in your budget, you still might not be able to do it if you don't have enough notice. So what I would recommend for everyone here is to have this conversation with your principal if you haven't already, but just go through this and have an idea and set those expectations. Like, this is how much notice I need to accomplish this. This is the information I need in order to get this out. These communication plans will save you a lot of frustration because as long as you know the expectations in advance, it makes it a lot easier to work with people. All right, I'm going to pause now. Does anyone have any questions, comments, feedback, any experiences that you want to share?
I have a question again. Sorry, I'm like hogging it.
Oh no, I love it.
Sorry, so sorry. When you remember me, you'd be like, oh gosh. So we don't have a communications chair. Is that something we should have? Because I would think that this is what we would expect our secretary to be doing necessarily, but is that kind of too much of a load for her?
Kind of depends what you would want to, you want standing rules. Let me go back to the website. So we have that template in here too. So Florida PTA bylaws, by the default is to have a recording secretary and a corresponding secretary. So let me go to standing rules. Where are they at? Here we go.
Yeah, we only have one though.
Okay, and that's fine. But the bylaws, you do not have to have, you can have your bylaws where you don't have a corresponding secretary. If you don't, I would recommend have a communications and or social media chair. Even if you don't want it to be a chair position, I would have someone who can help the secretary, because managing social media, managing member hub, managing email communications, managing flyers, all of that is extreme. It's very time consuming if you want it done well. Someone can absolutely blast an email out in 5 minutes, But do you want an email that comes out in 5 minutes, or do you want someone who will take 15 minutes to make sure it's a good email? So I would recommend having that conversation, and you can change it every year. Some secretaries are fabulous and want to do it all themselves, but we want to make sure that we're training someone because eventually we all leave. So it's a good way to have someone taken under their wing and give them a portion of it. But yes, I highly recommend a communications chair or social media chair. This is kind of what's listed here. And in your standing rules, you can explicitly state who's responsible for what. So you can say, our social media chair is in charge of Facebook and Instagram. Our corresponding secretary or secretary is in charge of sending out emails. You can also just have assistants. You can have someone who's not on the board that just does the monthly newsletter. You can do that too.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Katie, do you mean they're taking the corresponding secretary out of the bylaws?
I didn't hear it exactly, but I heard it mentioned twice that that corresponding secretary was no longer as relevant as it had been, and I don't know if that was removed from the bylaws or not, but it was definitely, you know, for years it's been that you can cross that out with no problem when you send in bylaws.
Correct.
But I know it was mentioned too that it was coming out of date.
100%, because the whole word corresponding meant, like back in the day, PTAs wrote letters, you know, like snail mail.
It was the person with the best handwriting in the past.
Exactly. And we don't really write letters anymore. I mean, we may get some bills in the mail, but we don't, I mean, so a corresponding secretary can still be in charge of like teacher birthday cards, or, you know, writing thank you notes. There is still a little bit of writing that can be done, but realistically, nobody really needs a corresponding secretary anymore. I would personally recommend taking them out of the bylaws for the main reason, if it's in your bylaws, you have to have it or you're out of compliance. Whereas if you have the position for a social media chair or a communications chair, that's optional. So your bylaws are something you have to have. Same thing with VPs. If you have 3 VPs listed in your bylaws, you have to have 3 vice presidents or you're out of compliance. Whereas your chairs, you can fill as you can. But if you don't have someone in that position, everyone else can kind of chip in and try and get it done, but you're not out of compliance without that. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. We have some PTAs that get 3 VPs every year with absolutely no issues. We have a lot of PTAs that struggle just getting the 3 bare minimum, which is president, secretary, and treasurer. So I like to keep your bylaws as flexible as possible because those are harder to change, whereas your standing rules, you can change it in board meeting. Thank you, Katie. It was very good.
I have a follow-up question to that question.
Sure.
If we do have a corresponding secretary currently who is acting basically in the capacity that you've explained a communication chair would, does that mean that that person is in the wrong position or has the wrong title? Like, should we adjust that or should we just leave it alone?
I don't want to say leave it alone. I would put it in your standing rules. If the corresponding secretary is doing that, put that in the standing rules. These are the corresponding secretary's responsibilities. And again, you can change these anytime, but that lets them know this is what I'm supposed to do. And you know, it prevents people from trying to step on toes or things like that. Like if she's or he or she is fine with that, absolutely just put that in standing rules. This is what this person is doing. I wouldn't worry so much about titles. Titles are titles as long as everybody knows what they're doing. And you know, comes back to that setting those expectations. If your corresponding secretary knows that this is what they're supposed to be doing, they know they're supposed to be doing social media, great. Doesn't matter what the title is, as long as everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. That's the biggest thing, is setting those expectations. Make sense?
Rachel?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, Katie.
The other thing I see on that is just being aware that the positions that are elected are your EC.
Correct.
And they are elected positions, and And then they're going to be the EC to make those decisions. So, you know, do you want that to be an EC position? If you have a choice, do you want it to be an EC position or a chair who simply comes to the board meetings?
Absolutely. That's a good, and for those who may be watching this later or aren't sure, EC stands for Executive Committee. As Katie mentioned, those are the ones who are elected every year, elected by the general membership. Once the executive committee, also known as the officers, are elected every year, they then choose the board members, the additional board members. They'll review any additional applications and vote on who's going to be the board members. Once the board is established, you know, let's say something stays open and in November, we finally get a hospitality chair, then as a board, you can vote them in. And then whoever voted them in, if in the event there's an issue, please, if there is an issue, please contact your county or state council, or your county council or state office. We try to make sure, you know, we want to try and resolve things. And I can only emphasize this so much, but communication breakdowns are the #1 reason people quit PTA. The expectations are either not set correctly. People have very different communication styles. And, you know, we're happy to help and be that liaison. But first and foremost, yes, communication issues are the #1 reason, at least in my experience, that people quit any volunteer role, not just PTA, because what is expected of them is not communicated clearly. And it can be very overwhelming to see all of this stuff. Like if I were just to see this at the first, you know, coming in and say, hey, yeah, sure, I can help out at some events. I'm coming in thinking I might serve some food or something. And then I see all of this, it's terrifying, right? It is so scary to see all these words. But if someone is like Speedy Gonzalez or, you know, Sonic the Hedgehog and can just do everything, they're going to be like, this is not enough, you know? So it's different people. And that's why I love this class and I love talking to people, because communication, you're going to have a lot of passionate people on PTA. We're all here because we all saw a need. We all stood up and we're all doing something that we don't have to do because we know that it needs to be done. You know, we have children who suffer. We have children who are hungry. We have children who cry themselves to sleep at night. We have children who are not safe in their home. We have children who are not safe in the schools. We have children who are not being protected by legislative laws. And that's why we're all here. We can all step, but that personality means a lot of people who are very passionate. And that can lead to some conflicts when they're very different styles. So if nothing else, one of our past presidents like to say, assume positive intent. That is a very difficult one. I'll even give an example of myself, is that when it comes to text messages, I am a millennial, and the generation before me or 2 generations before that likes to send text responses that are to the point, you know, okay or yes. And when I just wrote you 2 paragraphs and you just send me back the K, I was like, ugh. But I have to remember it's different communication styles. And that is the main thing that I'm going to drive home with all of this, is talk to each other, listen to each other, listen with an open heart and an open mind. You know, there's no problem that can't be solved when people come to the table willing to listen and willing to hear what someone else says and listen to how they feel, and be willing to explain your own feelings in return. That's also another thing that I have found, that a lot of volunteers, because they're so selfless, because you're standing up to help a need, you don't like to say when you're frustrated. You don't want to complain. You don't want anyone, you know, you don't want to be a burden. And so you don't speak up when you're frustrated, and that can build to resentment that shouldn't be there. You don't want to do that. That's the main thing. Communication. We're here to help in any way, shape, or form that we can. But just letting people know the expectations in advance, telling everyone your expectations, and then documenting it, which is why I'm coming back to this, especially between PTAs and principals, because I love our principals, but they are crazy busy and they have so much that they have to do. PTA is one of the things on their list. As much as we love to think that we are the lifeblood of the school, we're not. You know, we're one more program they have to supervise. So having this written down kind of helps, because you can always go back to this when there's a communication breakdown, or like, for example, when it comes to a check reimbursement. We had one treasurer who worked like 60 to 80 hours a week. It was an insane schedule. and she was constantly being asked for a check the very next day. It wasn't happening. So the PTA was upset and she was upset, all because a plan wasn't put in place to make everyone successful. We're all here. None of us have to be here. None of us have to do any of this. This is not our job. Nobody's getting paid. We're all here because we need to be here, and we can do each other and do our children a lot of justice by being willing and able to communicate. Meet people where they are and make sure that they're meeting you where you are. Sorry, I got a little lecture there. Any other feedback, any other experiences, any other questions anybody has? All right, I'm going to stop the recording then.